Welcome to the Business Spotlight podcast. My name is Kay Cote, and I'm your host for today's episode. And today on the show, I have Helen Viljoen, CEO and owner of Nebu Gold, as my guest. We're going to be learning about her journey to business ownership, best practices that she's learned along the way, as well as challenges that she's faced to give you that inside look to what it's like to run and operate a business. Welcome, Helen. So great to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kay. I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful. But before we get started on all the business questions, I'd love to share a little bit about you. So feel free to give a little bit of your backstory.
Well, I founded Nebu about 4 years ago. Well, it sort of really started it while I was actually a lawyer by trade. I was in medical negligence litigation, then jumped into corporate, basically being the in-house counsel for a company. And while I was there, I started Nebu. So I worked two jobs. Nebu was my passion. And then sort of left the legal world in 2021, where Nebu was fully, it really got market traction and was a viable company. And I've been growing the company ever since. I am originally from South Africa. I moved to Austin this year. It's been fantastic. The summer here has been, considering that I'm from South Africa and it's quite hot there, it's really been a shock. But everyone has told me that the summer here has, or this year at least, has been really mild. And yeah, just really looking forward to what the road is ahead with Nebu and continuing to build our network and community here.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to Austin. And yes, it has been a pretty mild summer as compared to last year and the year before. So, but yes, it was so great to have you here and to share about your business. And so, you mentioned the company started 4 years ago and you were a lawyer before that. So, how did you go from lawyer to jewelry?
So I was actually when I was in college, I got a degree in genetics and then law, and I was supposed to move on towards becoming a patent attorney. But then the medical negligence direction, sort of still having a scientific background, took that over. And I think how that created the building blocks for Nebu was I've always been fascinated by gold. Um, Gold is a 6,000-year-old technology. It is the oldest safe haven asset. And I mean, like all girls, I love jewelry. And sort of weaving all my learnings from the various, from genetics, I learned a lot about systems functioning. From law, I learned the importance of truth and transparency. And then from gold, just having something that actually was intrinsically valuable and appreciated over time, and figuring out a way how to merge the beauty and aspects of gold with the great aspects of jewelry, being, that you can adorn yourself with beautiful items, that it's sentimental, that most importantly, you can wear it, which is not something that you could do with gold. Gold, if anybody asks you, what do you think about a maple leaf or an American eagle? You think, oh, my grandpa has one, or I know our family has a couple in a vault, and they just sit there and collect dust. And we wanted to create something that, basically gave a facelift to gold, where we actually worked with high purity gold that was sold by weight at the prevailing gold price, and that you could actually wear your gold investment while it appreciated in value for you.
Mm. Well, you're speaking so many great things. I am a huge fan of gold jewelry, so I'm excited to dive into this conversation even deeper. Thank you for sharing a bit about your backstory. And, looking at your company, I'd love to share more about it, like looking at your ideal customer or who is that target person that you're looking for.
Well, I would say, generally speaking, our the majority of our customers are high net worth individuals, people who, the product that we're selling, this is not a trendy fashion item. You have to have a bit of understanding, or want to understand what gold can do to your investment portfolio. And you want to make smart choices, to give you an understanding of the even fine jewelry, the large brands that we all know. When you go into the store, it's an experience, but you're paying about 400 to 500% of the intrinsic value of that product in marketing fees, basically markup and marketing. So, I mean, as long as one understands that, you're paying for a brand, not necessarily for the value of the item. And we wanted to flip that ratio on its head. So instead of the intrinsic value being, 10 to 20% of the purchase value, now the intrinsic value is actually closer to 80%, and that grows over time. And I think that is sort of the people that we target are people that understand that, they care about that, they want to make financially smart decisions, and are thinking about ways, the other problematic thing with gold is you can't move it across borders. It's something that, I mean, coming from South Africa and coming from a country where your government erodes a lot of your purchasing power, and there are a lot of capital controls and that kind of thing, you can't take gold out of the country. I think legally you're allowed to take out 1 Kruger Rand, and it has to be a gift. Otherwise, you need to ask for permission, and there's a lot of red tape, which makes it a very difficult sort of asset to move. Whereas our product is something basically like gold Bitcoin. It can move through, you can carry it on you, you can wear it. It's not something that qualifies. And there's a whole history about this. I mean, even in the US, gold seizures, where, a couple of decades ago, the government actually confiscated privately owned gold. So our customers are definitely, along with being high net worth, they are financially astute. That said, we have converted and educated a lot of people that sort of test the product out and then actually come and repurchase. And it's a really nice way to expand your portfolio, but also get something beautiful. To invest in gold predominantly, I think your entry price, for a 1 ounce coin at the moment, gold is trading around $3,600 an ounce. Besides the minting fee, like that's quite a heavy price tag to pay. And we wanted to get as much gold, physical gold, into customers' hands at a lower price point, so we have a far bigger weight range, and therefore making it more accessible to the end consumer.
Definitely. And that makes a lot of sense. You touched on something I want to dive into, especially bringing your company to the States. How was that process for you? And is that something you're still working through?
Okay, that was probably the most existential crisis that the company has gone through to date. So from June of 2021, we exported or imported into the States. So we actually had our whole manufacturing base in South Africa. We manufacture in South Africa and Singapore. We have free trade agreements between the countries. So, in a business context, it was a wonderful, you're leveraging low cost labor, high quality work, and then accessing a relatively wealthy and large consumer base. But the decision to move the company physically was basically built on the principle that you should be in the market that you're selling in, not necessarily manufacturing in. In addition to that, your logistics and supply chains are a lot longer when you're importing and exporting. You have to deal with customs. There's all sorts of regulation. And I think there couldn't have been a worse year to move the company to the States with all the tariffs. I mean, in the gold space, I know that has almost crippled a lot of large companies. But again, highlighting the importance of the geopolitical environment that we're in right now, and who knows when it's going to, sort of calm down. that you're having, nationalist policies globally being implemented, and to shorten your logistics supply chain is really very important for a company. So that was part of our plan anyways, was to bring our whole supply chain. The vision was to create an all-American product from gold granule right through to a finished piece. We thought we had a bit more time until the tariffs, sort of felt out of left field in April. But it was a really, really challenging process to move the company over, and it is not a cheap exercise either.
That's like a really, I mean, no pun intended, but a golden nugget of what you said is companies who are bringing their full production and manufacturing and sourcing to one country. And so I think that's huge that were open to sharing about that. And now, is that something that's still challenging you today, or is that something you have worked through the hurdles and everything's running smoothly?
I think we're about 90% there. I think what has been hugely beneficial was we obviously had a lot of relationships and distribution partnerships in place. Um, we would not have, I think, to have moved the company sort of with no traction or no offtake would have been that would have been a disastrous decision. Um, I think we are, like I said, we're about 90% through the way. The problem is that our particular product is incredibly complex. So the barrier to entry of this type of business is extremely high. But finding those manufacturers, I think they were sort of the tariffs were twofold. On the one hand, you know, we were one of those people that had shipments in the air when on agreed pricing, they'd suddenly got whacked with a 30% tariff overnight. And you had to deal with that. On the other hand, to set up production lines and logistics chains in a country does not, it's not a short exercise. And the US hasn't manufactured on this scale for many years. It's exported all of its manufacturing out of the country. So I agree with the principle. You want to bring back a lot of that work. Um, but it's not something that happens overnight. And I think a lot of the manufacturers here were overwhelmed by companies similar to ours, even though that was part of our strategy. Um, how do they absorb this work? How do they do it quickly? How do they make it to spec? So I think we're close to the finish line, but we're definitely not out of the woods yet. And that has been probably well, hands down, our biggest challenge thus far.
Definitely. That makes so much sense, especially with all of the things that recently you've been faced with the tariffs and at the move and all of the things. And so thank you for sharing about that. I kind of want to shift a little bit back to like the core team, like who's helping you bring this vision to life. So what's your current ownership structure? Are you the sole owner, or are there other investors or board or other team members involved?
So I have a couple of angel investors, and then myself. So I own 81% of the company. And we've had some interesting movements on our cap table this year. Early employees, I always believe that at least your early team and the core team need to have skin in the game. If the company grows, they benefit because they were very crucial and instrumental to that growth. So we have a couple of sweat equity shareholders, but we've tried to keep it really simple because I think the most important thing in a young company is it's very easy on both sides to get bogged down by shareholder management and board structuring and a lot of the um, I guess strategic but not growth strategic work as opposed to administrative. On the other hand, I think a lot of startups fail at keeping good records of those things because they're so focused on growth and scale. So there's something that's a happy medium, and I think it's been really great. We've never had any kind of shareholder issues. One of our sweat equity shareholders exited this year. She wasn't no longer aligned with with the vision of the company, and we managed to part ways amicably, and that was positive because I think that can also be a huge distraction. But the company structure is actually relatively simple at this stage.
That's really great to hear too. And looking at now that's your on the ownership side, do you currently have a team of employees that you're working with, or what's that look like for you?
So we have two entities. One of the requirements for us to move a company based on the visa structure that we have is that you still have to have two operating entities. So we have a couple of staff that are still in South Africa, but the goal is to start growing the team. So myself and a colleague came over basically to lead the charge on expanding our US office, and we intend to hire locals in the next year. So our team is really small at the moment. We're leveraging a lot of our South African infrastructure, but with the intention of growing the US team and sort of whittling down the South African team.
Oh, that's wonderful. Kind of like sunsetting one side and sun rising the other.
Exactly.
And do you have an idea of how many team members you'd like to hire in this next year?
I think my approach to business has always been um, running it lean and having high performers that don't like or want to be micromanaged. We've leveraged a lot of automation and tech, which has been a huge benefit for and for most startups. I think there's so much technology out there that uh, removes the need for a much bigger team. That said, I think there's a lot of value in having a core team where everyone is aligned to the vision and the strategy of the company, and there's, great team morale, and everyone, is a rah-rah girl for that company. I think our ideal team size would probably be 4 to 5 people. And that you can actually run a pretty sizable, if you leverage automations and tech, you can actually run a sizable operation.
Definitely, kind of like a power in the
Mm,
quality of the team members that you're bringing on.
exactly.
And looking at now, I'd like to shift into the marketing that you're doing and how you're putting your product out there. What is your marketing structure currently like with your business, and where are you selling? Are you online or are you in stores? It's kind of a two-part question.
So at the moment, because I effectively bootstrapped the company with a very small angel investment, it's a very different strategy, bootstrapping a company to raising capital and then chasing growth. Um, so our focus was on getting profitable as quickly as possible, which we did within 18 months from founding, and have sort of run with that strategy going forward. So we distribute through some very, very large and trusted bullion dealers in the States. People or companies like Texas Precious Metals, JM Bullion, APMEX, SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange that have really great loyal customer bases. And the rationale behind that was, especially with a product like ours, so that's about 80% of our business. 20% was actually direct to consumer, building our brand, making sure that there's a story that people can verify. I think when you distribute through, if you even go shop on a marketplace like Amazon, you want to know about that brand because there's so many other products that are being sold there. And we want to also build a story for our customers. So that was sort of the rationale of why we did a hybrid setup. Um, E-commerce is extremely expensive to run, and marketing is extremely expensive. Now, coupling that with our type of product where it's an investment product and your margins are way thinner than someone who's selling a product, 400, 500% above cost, we had to be really crafty with our marketing. So this year we have actually focused predominantly on organic SEO and conversion rate optimization. That's sort of been our focus to keep our burn low, um, get that as streamlined and effective as possible before we start. The whole rationale behind it was if we pay for Google Ads, but you're getting great traffic into your bucket, but your bucket has 5 holes in it, the journey that you're going to have to walk back home, you're going to lose water along the way. So plug the holes, make sure that your bucket is completely complete and intact before you start taking that water home. So it's been a bit of a shift. I think we have done quite a bit of marketing, but realistically not at a high level. I mean, we were paying, which was pretty decent for how we've converted. I think our max spend was like $1,000 or $1,500. It was more like testing,
Mhm.
in Google Ads a month. But that is something that you have to spend money to make money. So we just decided to take a step back from that, check what our conversion rate actually is. If you don't have any marketing, fix that, make sure that that's streamlined, and then go back to the paid options.
I think that's really powerful what you said right there, especially when, like you said, like making sure there's no leaks. And what are some of the ways you're doing that with your company?
So, I mean, if we look at our funnel, even with organic traffic, I mean, this is now purely look, our distribution, that part of the business is wonderful because you have massive orders. They're doing a really great job at their retail side. So we don't really worry too much about that. That said, it is very important for us to manage the relationships and to continue to add more distributors. So that's pretty simple, outreach and B2B relationships. On our B2C side, um, depending on what platform you're on, I think, it's pretty easy to figure out, even if you don't have really great analytics on your platform, to see where you're getting a drop off on your funnel. It's really tricky for our particular company because we're a jewelry company, but we're not really a jewelry company. Um, but we follow that trend regardless. And as you see those customers move down the funnel, we saw that we had a pretty high drop-off rate at the checkout point. Then you can see, okay, well, we've had an insane amount of add to carts. What is happening between add to cart and checkout? And then what are all the things that that customer is seeing at checkout that are deterrents, that is making that checkout process, making them pause and reconsider, fix those, and then in theory it should pick up again. So we've done a lot of deep diving into the customer journey because ultimately that customer, and especially in the world that we live in today, customers want, we're all used to Amazon. You go onto Amazon, you add to cart. I mean, you can use Apple Pay. It doesn't matter whether you're on your phone or your laptop. It's simple and easy to use. And it's made it very difficult for other e-commerce brands, for something like shipping costs. We're again all used to, I mean, I mean, unless you have Prime subscription, you have to spend what, $35 to get free subscription, to get free shipping.
Hmm.
That makes it very tricky for high value items that are being shipped, that are upward. I mean, our AOV is about $2,000. That's a very expensive item. It's a very valuable item. It's something that needs to be insured, and that has a cost to it. So it's a balancing act between offering a great customer experience, but also making sure that you're not running at a massive loss to achieve said customer experience.
That's very valuable. I think many, especially e-commerce,
Mm.
entrepreneurs could find a lot of value in what you said there because that's huge. Kind of as we're gearing towards the end of the conversation, I have a couple more questions for you. The first one is something a little bit more conceptual, but it's if you had a magic wand and could rapidly improve one aspect of your business overnight, what would it be?
Oh, conversion rate 100% all the way. I
Mm.
think, you know, bidding pay, like I said, you have to spend money to make money. But if you have a great conversion rate, then you essentially don't have to spend as much as what you normally would. It's about that basically having an intact bucket. Um, if you're walking to the well every day And it starts getting soul destroying when you keep walking and you get back to the home and you have half the bucket. You filled it up and now there's only half the water inside the bucket. That would be hands down the thing. Well, I say that, but that and having our manufacturing in place stateside, that would be probably number one, and then number two would be conversion rate.
Those are two very, yeah, very strong. Thank you for sharing those. And for our before we get to our final question, let's share about your business. How can people connect with you and your business online?
So we are on, it's www.nebugold, Neb for ball U, gold.com. You can also find a lot of information on our brand there and our distributors. And then I'm on LinkedIn as Helen Viljoen.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Helen. I'm so excited to stay connected with you. And also, I think our audience is going to get so much out of this. So, for everybody listening and watching, take a few times through, especially with e-commerce and high value items. And so, thank you so much. And for our final question today, what is most inspiring to you today?
I think the spirit of America has been really inspiring. I know that there's a lot going on, but there's a lot going on internationally. And I think the thing that has really inspired me here is how communities band together um, and support one another. That's been really, really made this journey so much easier.
I love to hear that, and a big warm welcome to Austin, and I wish you the best with everything you do. Thank you for sharing your story with me today.
Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks for having me.